As cattlemen, we've all dealt with water gaps and fence lines. And today we're going to talk about something a little different, and that's the gap in the cattle market. So let's jump right in. So the issue that we're talking about today is how the live cattle markets are different from the retail beef prices that you see in the store. Right now the cattle prices are very low, while beef prices and beef demand are increasing and are very high. And so, this issue doesn't just affect the big guys, and it just doesn't affect the small guys. It affects everybody in the cattle industry, from feedlots to the cow-calf operations and even the stockers. And then it also affects the beef demand, from the consumer side of the things. So some of the definitions and stuff that I'm sure we all know, but we just want to run over again. Let's start off with the CWT, and that's just the hundredweight for cattle, and that's just how most markets are conducted in. The next would be the futures market, which is just an exchange market where buyers and sellers trade contracts, and that can be anything from corn to cattle. And then the basis is the difference between that futures market and the cash price. And then we're also going to talk about some boxed beef, and you need to know about that too. And that's just what the packing plants put in their boxes, basically. That's normally higher quality cuts, like the steaks and stuff like that. And then there's also a CME feeder cattle index, and that's something you'll see on charts, and that's the Chicago Mercantile Exchange index, and it's just a rolling average of cattle or steers that are going to feed yards from in a certain area at a certain weight that meet criteria. And so the issue is not a new one. The gap in the between retail and live cattle prices it's not a new thing. So there's an article published in 1993 that talks about how the meat packers conduct business in the feed cattle pricing, and it talks about how that there's in the title there's a big word. It's oligopsony. It's hard to say. Oligopsony. And that just means that it's a state of market where there's a small number of buyers for a product, and that's just in the cattle industry. That would be the beef packing plants. There's a small number of those, and every single cattle producer has to put their beef through those packers. And so in that article, he talks about how we do need to check this, and there's a quote here, and it talks about the varying conduct across markets, and over time, this suggests that it is important to continue monitoring fed cattle markets to assure a competitive environment. So all he's saying is that we do need to keep a check on this because it is an issue, and we need to keep checking it in order to make sure it doesn't go out of control. And here recently, it has gotten a little worse. There's also other articles out there. This one is competition issues in the U.S. Beef industry, and it talks about how some of the larger packers are using price fixing things. And that started, in January of 2015. So this is not a new issue. It's been going on for quite some time. So the current state of things, we're facing the coronavirus, and due to this, the retail beef prices are going up and beef demand is going up because everybody's cooking at home. But the issue with this is that the cattle markets, the live cattle markets, have decreased considerably. They're not very high, and also beef production has decreased. And this chart shows you that how the beef production has really gone down. So the OSU has done some research on the economic damage that the COVID virus has had on the cattle industry, and estimates that it will have on the cattle industry, and it talks it uses the estimated losses across about 63 million animals, and that's anything from cow-calf producers to stockers and all the way in the feedlot sector. So the total economic damage is going to be about 13.6 billion, and then that's 9.2 billion just in total revenue loss. And the cow-calf and the stocker operations, those are the guys that are going to be hit hard because they don't have what they call price protection. So in the feedlot, you can buy puts and calls and kind of have a little buffer on your on the market price to help when markets are bad, or add money when it's good. And so those cow-calf and stocker operations, they don't have the convenience to have that. So they are very dependent on the cattle market. And when there's such a gap in it, like there is now, it's a little bit of an issue. So what is being done about it? There's lots of things that. So there's the news is actually helping out quite a bit. It's taking cattlemen and putting their story out there, and these cattlemen are being very proactive and speaking up about how this is an issue, and that we need to investigate it. And it's not just normal cattlemen. It's publications and universities are all getting together and saying, hey, we need to investigate this issue. So then all the cattlemen's organizations are trying to advocate for the cattlemen, and they're whether you're in any different or association, whether it's NCBA or U.S. Cattlemen's Association, they all have different views on things, but the end goal for them is to help the cattlemen, and that's what they're all trying to do. And so NCBA has the president decided to send a letter to President Trump, and he urges him to expand the market investigation and look into more of the futures market. And a quote from there that I really enjoy, I like it, and it's very true. Fair and functioning cattle markets are vital to the sustainability of our industry, and that is so true. And so one thing that Trump has he has taken out an executive order on to keep the meatpacking plants open, and this is not only to help the cattlemen; it's also to feed the country. But what it does is it keeps that gap that is already there. It keeps it from getting even larger, and this is an ongoing issue, and we're not at the end yet. We need people to advocate more and say, hey, this is going on. Why is it going on? And that's the main goal we need to reach here. And so that's pretty much what I have here. Here's the references that I used. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.